Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments when silence is even more frightening than 1,000 peals of thunder. At 9:45 a.m. on the 28th, at the Pasteur complex in the heart of the capital, Tehran, the world witnessed such a silence. It was not the stillness of peace, but the stillness of a sharp surgical blade piercing through the firmest layers of reinforced concrete, ending an era and opening a new order. In the flow of military history, never has the line between existence and nothingness been so thin. And here we are not only talking about an ordinary firepower raid, but talking about a symphony of steel arranged by genius brains and carried out by machines bearing the souls of the masters of modern war. So right after this, military commentary respectfully invites you to prepare to step with us into the dark room of top-secret files to decode every detail of the super weapons that created the recent global shock on the Middle Eastern land, still carrying the smell of gunpowder. Military power, the treasured sword of the peace-loving. Dear audience, before going deep into the secret hardware and the top technical specifications, please allow us to share a few words about the perspective of the military commentator. The ancients said, "Weapons are inauspicious instruments," meaning that weapons themselves are already something unwholesome, and even less a treasure of the gentleman. Here we study military hardware absolutely not to promote slaughter or admire the means of war. On the contrary, we love peace and cherish every sprout of life on this planet. But thousands of years of history have taught humanity a bitter lesson. To preserve peace, we must have military strength strong enough to deter evil. Military power is not a tool to wage war, but the supreme brake to restrain belligerent minds. Understanding military hardware is so that we can recognize strength and know that peace is only truly durable when it is protected by a sharp sword lying quietly in its sheath. True military power, in the end, is not for harming or waging war, but is the route to uphold justice and prevent the seeds of calamity. The sharing is complete. And now please do not take your eyes off the screen. We will together decode the first entity, the flying bar of gold named the Spirit Phantom. B-2 Spirit, the $2 billion phantom gliding through the boundless sky. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is an entity that represents deadly silence in the sky, it can only be the strategic bomber B-2 Spirit. Imagine a machine in the form of a predatory wing from prehistoric times, worth more than $2.1 billion. A number enough to build an entire modern city, yet it glides in the night without leaving any ripple of sound or any radar trace. This is not just an aircraft. This is the peak of technological arrogance, where humans and military hardware have tried to become invisible before all ordinary laws of physics. With a gigantic wingspan up to 52 meters but no vertical tail, the B-2 possesses a strange geometric structure called the flying wing. This design is not for beauty, but to eliminate every radar reflection angle, turning a huge steel mass weighing dozens of tons into a blur smaller than a sparrow on the enemy's screen. The entire body is covered by a secret radar-absorbing paint layer, a kind of technological black art that allows it to swallow all emitted waves from Iran's most sophisticated air defense complexes, such as S-300 or Bava 373. Step into the cockpit. You will not feel the usual noise or vibration. It is a strangely quiet digital technical universe with liquid crystal displays and central processors capable of calculating billions of operations per second. Here, 2 American pilots can operate an entire arsenal of destructive weapons with just light button presses. In the terror operation on the 28th, the B-2 with the codename Ghost of the Desert silently approached the target from an altitude of more than 15,000 meters. At that height, in the boundless and cold sky, the B-2 was not merely dropping bombs, it was executing a sentence coming from nothingness. The B-2 Spirit carried in its belly bay the death certificate bombs GBU-72 with a frightening calm. The role of the B-2 in this symphony of steel was the one who fired first, the one who opened the curtain for a tragedy that the opponent only realized when everything was already too late. It came like a wind, left like a shadow, leaving behind the wreckage of fortresses thought to be invulnerable. The ancients said, "The divine dragon shows its head, but not its tail," and the B-2 is the dragon of the digital age, the one who turns the night sky into its own stage for the dance of the god of death. GBU-72 Advanced 5K bombs, the art of weaving embroidery on a foundation of reinforced concrete. If the B-2 is the silent messenger, then the GBU-72 Advanced 5K is the surgical blade that directly carries out the sentence. This is the newest penetration bomb, weighing about 2.3 tons. It is considered the refined descendant of the 14-ton monster MP that came earlier, but with far greater sophistication. Unlike ordinary bombs that only know how to explode on contact with the ground, the GBU-72 possesses an extremely smart brain called the FMU-143 fuse. This brain can measure with astonishing precision. It counts each layer of concrete, each space it has passed through. Thanks to its ultra-hard alloy shell with a special dense structure, the GBU-72 can penetrate more than 30 meters of high-strength concrete as if stabbing through a thin layer of butter. In the battle on Pasteur Road, 2 GBU-72 bombs carried out a mysterious sequential strike technique. The first broke the upper armor layer, shattering the seismic structure of the complex. Immediately, the second followed the same trajectory, burrowing deep into the core of the bunker before igniting. This was not blind destruction, but an underground surgical operation that tore open the chest of the Pasteur fortress to clear the way for the next assassins. It was the perfect combination between muscle power and digital intelligence, proof that when technology speaks, all concrete underground shelters become meaningless. EA-18G Growler, the one who shuts the mouths of arrogant radars. If the B-2 Spirit is like a phantom gliding in the dark night, then in the sky over Pasteur that day there was another presence. It did not directly drop bombs, but it decided the survival of the entire operation. The EA-18G Growler, the most terrifying electronic warfare killer on the planet. In military strategy, there is a move called win with soundlessness, and Grower is the steel embodiment of that principle. Imagine an aircraft worth more than $70 million, developed from the airframe of the multi-role fighter FA-18 Super, but instead of carrying dozens of air-to-air missiles, it carries invisible weapons that can silence all enemy communication systems. The heart of Growler is an electronic suite, so sophisticated it is hard to believe, with ALQ-99 jamming pods under the wings and the ALQ-218 signal receiver system mounted on the wingtips. In the battle at Pasteur, when Iran's S-400 and Bava-373 radars were straining their eyes to find targets, Growler unleashed terrifying electronic blows. It did not destroy radar with explosives. It destroyed with algorithms. It pumped into the enemy system an enormous amount of jamming data, turning Iranian operators' screens into a mess of phantoms. The result? Hopeless helplessness. Iran's billion-dollar missile complexes became broken swords in the hands of a blind buyer. Growler fully performed the role of a guardian, using an electronic aura to cover and protect the B-2 as it approached the ignition point. That was proof that in modern war, whoever holds the wavelengths holds destiny. Tomahawk Block 5, Black Arrow knife thrusts, and the art of vacuum execution. When the bunker door had been pierced by the GBU-72, that was when the symphony entered its final climax, with the appearance of 7 Black Arrow cruise missiles Tomahawk Block 5. If you think Tomahawk are just slow missiles from the Cold War, then we are mistaken. The Block 5 version is a completely different monster, a killer with soul and intelligence. With a cost of nearly $2 million each, Tomahawk Block 5 carries one of the most sophisticated navigation brains. It does not fly along a dry, straight line. It knows how to follow terrain, slip through mountain gaps, and fly at extremely low altitude to hide from all enemy eyes. Its structure is a perfect combination of durable composite materials and an extremely fuel-efficient turbofan engine that allows it to travel thousands of miles with an error only the width of a palm. But the most notable thing in the battle at Pasteur was the thermobaric warhead WDU-36B of this Black Arrow killer. When the 7 Black Tomahawks slipped through the obvious crater the GBU bomb had just created, they did not need to smash the bunker structure. Instead, they triggered an extremely strong chemical reaction, sucking out all oxygen inside the enclosed space and creating a terrifying pressure storm. Bang! This was a surgical beheading knife. It did not leave a wasteland of rubble on the surface, but it erased all biological targets inside with a deadly vacuum zone. The combination of GBU-72, the Doorbreaker, and Tomahawk Block 5, the Executioner, created an operation scenario with 102. It shows us that when the power of technology reaches maturity, it can eliminate evil neatly, coldly and so precisely it chills the spine. The 7 black arrows launched from the deep sea were messengers of justice executing a sentence without any useless showy explosion. Coordination between sky and sea when algorithms connect everything. Ladies and gentlemen, the strength of American hardware lies not only in each aircraft or each single missile, but in multi-domain coordination. In the strike at Terre Road, the link between Growler in the air and Tomahawk under the sea is a typical example of network warfare. Through the data link system called Link 16, the Growlers can see where the enemy radar is and immediately send those coordinates to the Tomahawks in flight. The missiles will automatically adjust their trajectories to avoid danger zones while enemy radar is still struggling with the electronic phantoms created by Growler. This is a global-scale game of Go, where each piece clearly understands its position and mission in a unified whole. The ancients said, "Use softness to overcome hardness." While the opponent tried to reinforce thick layers of hard concrete walls, the United States used invisible electromagnetic waves, softness, and precise surgical blades to dissolve them. True military power is not in making the biggest explosions, but in the ability to coordinate smoothly between artificial intelligence and precision firepower, making all defense efforts meaningless before the power of algorithms and technological hardware. The Aegis system on the destroyer, the brain coordinating the fate of the battle. Ladies and gentlemen, if the B-2 Spirit or Toma are sharp swords, then the EAS combat system on the destroyer Thomas H. Nair is the brain that controls the entire strategic board. In Greek mythology, Aegis is the shield of the gods, and on the modern sea, it is the symbol of absolute information dominance. An Alibji-class destroyer costs nearly $2 billion, and more than half of that value lies in the Soul Eyes. The heart of ICE is the multifunction phased array radar AN-SPY-1D, a divine eye capable of scanning hundreds of targets at once from the sea surface up to the edge of space with near zero error. The interior structure of the EGIS Central Control Room is like a space operations center where dozens of supercomputers process data at the speed of light. In the Pater operation, IAS not only protected the fleet, it played the role of conductor connecting everything. It received data from military satellites, from the Growlers jamming, then transmitted target codes to the 7 Black Arrow Tomahawks cutting through the wind. Right at ICE, the attack was no longer scattered knife thrusts, but a perfect coordinated fire network. Its combat capability allowed the United States to carry out a turning-the-table strike, standing far offshore, but still able to steer missiles straight into the window of a bunker. This is the peak of coordination art, where power no longer lies in soldiers' muscles, but in the sharpness of algorithms and the mastery of electronic space. The sea dragons of the deep when the ocean speaks judgment. If the sky has the B-2 Spirit, then deep under the ocean, the presence of nuclear submarines of the Ohio and Virginia classes is the enemy's greatest terror. Call them the sea dragons of the deep, invisible, silent, but carrying the power to destroy an entire nation. An Ohio-class submarine costs about over $2 billion. It is 170 meters long and can dive to about 600 meters under terrifying pressure. Its structure is a labyrinth of ultra-strong steel and noise reduction technology, reaching the level of without trace. In the Terre battle, the nuclear submarines did not need to surface. They lay silently under the Arabian Sea, launching Tomahawks through vertical launch tubes without the enemy knowing. The terror of nuclear submarines lies in absolute surprise. When missiles burst up from the sea surface, the enemy has only a few minutes to react. The role of these Sea Dragons in the operation on the 28th was to create reserve firepower and strike from angles Iran did not expect. With the ability to carry up to 154 Tomahawks for a converted Ohio class, a single submarine is already a mobile arsenal enough to flatten any base. But according to estimates by military experts, the U.S. used only 4 missiles from here. The rest could be launched from destroyers. A calculated restraint to keep the surgery at its most refined. These deep-sea killers are proof of the principle. The greatest sound is actually silence, and the most terrifying power is the power that cannot be seen. Aircraft carriers, floating fortresses, and symbols of national will. Ladies and gentlemen, no modern war machine can be complete without the presence of the super aircraft carriers, such as the U.S. Abraham Lincoln. Each supercarrier of the NMIT or Ford class is an engineering wonder costing from $5 to $13 billion, a number that could feed an entire small nation for many years. With a flight deck area larger than 16,000 square meters, that is over 1.6 hectares, bigger than 2 standard football fields combined, and carrying more than 80 combat aircraft. This is the embodiment of imposed power. The structure of an aircraft carrier is the combination of a military airfield, a nuclear power plant, and a miniature city with more than 5,000 people operating it. In the operation striking Pasteur, although the carrier did not directly launch missiles or drop bombs on Tehran, it was the operating system of the entire fleet. It was the departure point for EA-18G Growlers to silence enemy radar, a huge satellite data relay station, and the imposing commander holding position far offshore to ensure no military force dared intervene in the coalition's military surgery. The merit of an aircraft carrier lies in support and deterrence. Its presence is a wordless message. The U.S. can bring firepower to any corner of the world without asking anyone's permission. In strategy, this is momentum. When momentum is strong enough, the opponent collapses before fighting. The aircraft carrier is the anchor that keeps world order from being shaken, proof that America's power lies not only in missiles, but in its ability to maintain enduring presence and authority on every front. The fortress of hearts and the core values of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, we have peeled back the steel layers of the B-2, decoded the algorithms of ICE, and witnessed the might of Tom Hen. But after all those billions of dollars and dry technical parameters, what remains in the end? History has proven that no matter how deep the bunker is, hundreds of meters, no matter how many layers of reinforced concrete, they are only graves if the people's hearts have departed. No matter how high military power reaches, it is only a tool to protect higher human values. The ancients said, "He who wins hearts wins the world." The operation breaching Pasteur succeeded not only because America had GBU-72 or B-2 or aircraft carriers and so on, but because they represented a judgment against evil for a long-term peaceful order for humanity. And as said above, we study military hardware and analyze war not to be intoxicated with destruction or promote violence, but to understand that the price of peace is unceasing vigilance. True military power must be placed under the guidance of morality and justice. A peaceful world is not a world without weapons, but a world where the strongest weapons are in the hands of the most responsible and justice-loving people. The symphony of steel at Pasteur has ended. The lessons about power and peace will continue to echo. May the treasured swords we have analyzed remain forever in their sheaths like silent guardians, so that humanity may live in the light of stability and prosperity.